Now I'd like to introduce Mike Nuzzo, golf course designer from Houston, Texas, who did a great golf course called Wolf Point Golf Club in Gulf Coast, Texas. You build it for one individual, and so that one individual probably isn't too concerned about affordable golf. But the point is that Mike had an opportunity to do all sorts of things for this one individual, and he designed the golf course the right way, which is a very affordable way to do it. So please welcome Mike Nuzzo.
Thank you very much. I'd like to sit down up front. Today I'd like thank you, Rich. I'd like to hopefully get as many questions as we can. There's so many interesting things that everyone talks about that we really try to incorporate, and it does often work very well, and there's often very good solutions to what we're all talking about this week. So a little background, my name is Mike. I'm from Houston. I've been in Houston about 12 years. I grew up in the Northeast. I grew up playing golf with my father, my grandfather. We played, I was introduced to the game quite young. So the family yesterday, I was a caddy when I was younger as well, so I've had a good influence. I got to see a lot of the traditions of the game. I've enjoyed playing from all perspectives. And this is actually my second career. My first career, I was an engineer. I spent 10 years working for Lockheed Martin, and we did some very advanced construction manufacturing. We built satellites, and I was a lead engineer, and I designed satellite antennas that provided coverage for a good percentage of the globe. And my love of the game brought me back. And I've always been a designer, and so a lot of perspectives I brought into the golf world, I had a lot of questions, and a lot of things seemed to be not affordable. And so my experience is about 12 years ago when we moved to Houston, I started helping as many different people in the industry as I could, builders, developers, other architects, superintendents, owners, and I got to see a wide perspective and really learn quite a bit more, bringing in some of my experiences. So it is a personal golf course, as Rich mentioned. I got a call from my client, and he said he wanted a golf course. And when we got to the point of the conversation where I asked him if it would be a public course or a private course, his response was he doesn't have too many friends. So that meant it was going to be just for him. So my first site visit, I really didn't know what to, he didn't say how much land he said he had a piece of land that was just enough, 140 acres. He said he had a little bit more land across the street, but he wanted to work there. And I said, well, there's been some great golf courses built on 105 acres and more. So you'll be, it'll work just fine. And so my trip to visit him, I was rethinking everything. I tried to figure out what he could do to have his own enjoyment of the game and do it affordably as possible, whether it's on the Gulf Coast of Texas, so it rains a considerable amount. Does he need irrigation? Does he need drainage? What does he need? What do we have to do to establish? What's his time frame going to be? So I tried to open it up to, assuming that he wasn't going to have his own, when we were finished, that he wasn't going to have his own golf course, because I thought he would eventually not even know what he was asking for. And when we first started talking, like I asked him if he wanted 2 holes, 3 holes, 5 holes, and he was adamant about having his own golf course, 18 holes, and he wanted to play every day. And it took a while for me to actually understand that he really did want his own golf course, and it was just going to be him and his friends playing every day. Which still doesn't seem affordable, because he said the construction budget could be whatever it wanted. And in the beginning, I was starting to emphasize but he also has to take care of it every year, so we have to target what maintenance budget would be. Early on, I brought a superintendent friend of mine now. His name is Don, and together, the two of us created the golf course for him, and it turned out really good. There was, I just want to read one quote. Adam Lawrence, who was in the picture that Gordon showed yesterday over at Ashkenaz, he's the editor at Golf Architecture magazine, and his quote, because it is a personal golf course, very few people have seen it, so I can come up and talk about it, and it might not make a whole lot of sense, and it might not be applicable, but it really does fit for just about everybody. My love of Wolf Point, even from one short visit, will hopefully shine through to readers. Not only is it the best first course by a modern architect, it is also a living case study for the future of golf design and construction. And the reason he said the case study is because we built it for $3 million, and it's maintained, the original target was to maintain it for about $500,000, and it's currently maintained for far less than $500,000. If anything, he says, well, you take care of it too nice. It's a little bit too nice, and it's fine just the way it is. So even though it's affordable, and what we did at the course is simple isn't always easy, and it isn't cheap. So that first phone call, really what he asked for was he wanted to not have to search for lost balls, and he wanted to have to be a little challenging. Well, actually, he said he wanted to be challenged, and I almost fell on the floor because that sounded like the old course to me. There aren't many clients that, like Rich is describing, and we've had experiences with clients that need to have bar stepping and seating, need to have cart paths, need to have cart paths through the tees, it has to be everything to everybody. And all he wanted to do was not have to search for lost balls, and he wanted to be challenging. And it also, because he's playing every day, it needed to be fun. It had to be, it had to maintain his interest. It had to have a lot of variety. So Don and I, he was the superintendent in Southern California then, and he worked his way towards Texas, and had some great experiences with poor waters, good waters, desert climates, had a lot of different experiences. So we really wanted to see how the golf, ideally for our client, would best fit the environment. What did we have to work with? So Texas is hot, it's windy, it is very windy on days, rainy, heavy soils, we had some sands on the back of the property, just underneath a little bit of clay, and basically it's a large cattle ranch. And to skip back to how much property he had, when we were going to visit the site, we actually skipped a little piece of property, and we drove into this big gigantic cattle ranch, and he had all the room in the world, and we didn't have to worry about 2 holes and 3 holes. I still suggested that he could build 3 holes, but he really wanted to be. His perspective was different from most of ours, in that it was the way he was going to spend 2 hours a day. It was something that would entertain him, and that's the way it is still. He plays every day, and it takes about 2.5 hours. He rides a lot. He walks in the morning, and then he'll ride the course. It's a small amenity to his day. So the resources that he had, just like with any new client, you should look at all the resources they have. He had a large ranch. He had a small crew. He had a crew that took care of the ranch. We had sand, and he also had equipment. So he had an oil services equipment with some bulldozers, excavators, and I wanted to be conservative working with him, so it turned out as good as possible. And he eventually said, no, we can be a little more aggressive, and he could take on more risk. And he was comfortable with me and Don being responsible for the construction and the entire the entire facility. So having a client that can accept those type of risks and not have to worry about every type of golfer was a huge benefit for us. There was one requirement that he asked for, and it was after Hurricane Katrina, and he was going to build his house in the middle of the property, and his house he wanted his house to be elevated, because it is the elevation of the ranch is about 20-25 feet, so a large storm surge coming in could flood the property. And so with the house elevated, we did need to excavate a large lake, and it was also irrigation reservoir. But what we were able to do is, there's farming in the area. So there's farmers that had large scrapers, and we found a team of farmers, and with a handheld GPS unit, we were able to instruct farmers to excavate the lake. The lake is large. In order to elevate the house 20 feet, it took a good amount of material, and I generally don't want to move that much material. So in this case, we in order to make it a large pad that was gradual, we dug a 13-acre lake, and that was our irrigation reservoir. And with farmers, so I didn't mention the total cost of the golf course because it does. We built it entirely for $3 million, and part of that was because we used whatever resources we had. The farmers, their excavators, and a handheld GPS unit. We were extremely efficient, and we didn't have a golf course that was designed by Old Tom Morris just sitting underneath under the surface, but we used what we had on the property. I still, it's hard to get astronauts off. Finding an Old Tom Morris golf course just underneath the sands is a resource similar to, it's not similar to anything. So one of the major components for the cost of the golf course is the irrigation system. And there's an example I want to share that there's a 50-year-old golf course, and they've saved up $2 million. They want to redo the golf course, and in order to one of the components, the irrigation system is antiquated. It breaks a lot, but the turf is good, and so part of the project is to replace the irrigation system. And of their $2 million budget, the irrigation component came in at $1.8 million. So they'd be left with nothing to repair tees, build any types of repairs to greens. And the biggest difference is the spacing on the existing golf course is 85-foot spacing, which means the sprinklers are all spaced across the golf course. And the newer modern types is to the direction is to get the heads spaced closer together so you can more accurately irrigate any specific fairways, tees, and greens. But the cost jumps up dramatically, and they'll never be able to afford this new irrigation system. But here, we were able to be a little bit more, not more aggressive, but the conditions weren't, like we saw from the survey, the conditions don't have to be perfect. And you can get really good conditions with a system that's reliable. The components don't break. We use high quality components. And to reference Chris yesterday's talk was about the down the middle, we only irrigated the areas that were in play. And that saves so the total irrigation of the property is about 85, close to 90 acres, and it's all fairway, and it's all of it's in play. All the areas that are unirrigated came back naturally because it rains. I mean, it's eventually going to return to its natural state. And we didn't try to disturb any of those areas. We just disturbed the areas that we were going to irrigate. what happens all too often with replacing the irrigation system is when the cost comes in at $1.8 million, when you have a $2 million budget for the entire golf course, the first thing that typically happens is you start looking for cheaper components and cheaper, there's different types of pipe, and what happens is reliability starts to drop, and the superintendents, what they really want is they don't want a system that's going to break and they have to come in a superintendent can be on call more than a doctor, so if the superintendent has to be on site, holidays, Sundays, they don't want to have to worry about whether the system's not breaking. So, but you can still do an affordable system and use great quality components. The turf of the golf course with the 85-foot spacing, the turf is fine. That's not the problem. So irrigation is a huge component. I'd like to talk about irrigation just because of the percentage of the overall budget. And it has a huge impact on future maintenance, drainage, erosion, and every problem you see on the golf course. Because our clients kind of play every day, we talk about how important greens are to the golf course, and typically, well, not typically, we'll just say that these greens out there, we try to build everything to be as interesting and different. So if you play every day, you're going to see a different type of hole, a different location. It's really going to affect the way you play every day. So wide fairways, interesting undulating greens. We've learned that the average golfer does enjoy interesting greens, and they just from a few minutes ago, they're the greens we built with native sand from the back of the property. We had some sands we hadn't tested. They were not typical sands that you use to build greens, and it was what we had in the property, but we used warm season grasses, which was the sands we had on site was just enough to maintain and to meet our clients' objectives. So the greens are large and they're interesting, and because they're interesting, it allows us to create a lot of surface drainage, and the swales throughout the greens are there are two purposes. They make it more fun, more enjoyable, and to allow the water to surface drain and get they would be quite a bit the way they were built in the old days. It's a treat to get out and play. So when we started, we had a target maintenance budget in mind, and it was typically, it was a fair bit less than a typical country club in the area, and we needed to figure out how we'd be able to maintain it affordably, and our client had a small team of ranch hands that took care of his property, and Don was able to train the individuals and have to become part of our entire crew. So they were involved in the finishing, and now have taken ownership on the property and take care of it every day, and they get to play, and they really took a sense of ownership, and it's they have become an integral part of the golf course. And on other projects, we actually are able to utilize the crew and go. This summer we rebuilt 9 greens for a local municipal golf course, and the reason why this is applicable, even though it's a personal golf course, is because the things we did are affordable for any type of projects. We rebuilt 9 greens at a municipal golf course using the crew that have been and the shapers that have been trained on this project, using similar methods, and we're able to rebuild 9 greens for less than $100,000. And at first, the city said, kind of tone them down a bit. We can't have them be as wild as they are out here at Bull Point, but we'd like to we really like what you did and your methods. And after the first 9 greens are built, they've been so warmly received. They said, well, it's a 27-hole municipal golf course. The next year, when you rebuild the next 9, the field should make them a little more fun because everyone loves them. And but they can afford it. For the reason why we're able to rebuild those 9 greens is because they could afford it. If it was to, there's another municipality that I'm consulting with. Their greens weren't performing well. There was a winter where it rained a tremendous amount. There was very little sunlight. There was quite a bit of disease, and the plan, they had received some reports, not USDA reports, but they received some studies that said that they needed to core out the greens and replace everything, which would have been a $400,000 item. And they asked me and Don to go in and suggest how much they couldn't afford the full greens reconstruction. And it turns out they had actually more than 12 inches anyway. They had 16 inches of sand. It would have been a fortune to rebuild the greens. And they hired us to tell them how much, to recommend how much of their greens to rebuild. And through the course of our research, we found that the greens were fine. They were not draining properly. The outfalls weren't, they were clogged. They were in construction, the way they were built. So the same crew, we could come in and it was a $25,000 repair versus rebuilding their entire set of greens, and they actually never closed. So this maintenance crew has become integral to all types of projects to help everything become affordable. So at Wolf Point, because our client wanted it to be fun, not with lost balls, the model of the old course is a lot of fairway. So we have one of the plans from the beginning was to be able to take care of the golf course, take care of all the fairways with the gang mower. So there aren't a whole lot of gang mowers in use aside from some small municipalities and some go branches, but a gang mower with proper conditions turns out. I was a bit surprised because I'm more from a player standpoint. I was a bit surprised at how well the gang mower takes care of the golf course, and Don really has. There's a lot of detail. It's simple to use a gang mower to take care of a golf course, but there's a lot of details that have to go into being able to use a gang mower. And it's working great. We have one grass type throughout the entire course. It's all Bermuda grass. We do have a dwarf on the green, but when you're on the golf course, it's just big, broad swaths of grass that rolls, and there's very little detail work. There's not different heights of cut. It's all fairway. There's not as much as the U.S. Open should have a graduated rough. We chose to just have it all be fairway. And the strategy of the golf course comes if you're, depending on the location, the whole location for the day. If you're on the wrong side of the fairway, you will not have a good. There's definitely importance in where you place the ball in the fairway. So it does challenge a better golfer. That isn't our first goal, but it is always. Our client does. He's a better than average player, and it allows it to be more interesting, not just to be able to blindly hit the ball and hit the ball with the green. Every shot matters when the maintenance and the design work together. So there was in my engineering career there was what was called design for manufacture. If you design something and they couldn't build it, it would be useless. And so we would spend a lot of time watching machinists and watching how parts are manufactured, so you could design so it would be easily built. And the approach we took, Don and myself, was to have the course designed for construction so it could be easily maintained. And it does. With the gang mower in mind from the beginning, we had to make sure that it would be possible. The bunkers were. Initially, our client said when you draw a golf course on a plan, it looks nice when you have a lot of bunkers, and it looks pretty good. We went through I went through a couple different routings to get a feel for the property, to know what his boundaries were, how far we could go. And one of the early sketches had about 100 bunkers in it because it looks nice when you draw them. And for some reason, he was always pushing for, let's keep building with 100 bunkers. But eventually, during construction, we cut it back quite a bit, but we still wind up with 60 bunkers. And they're smallish, and the grass rolls down, and it's easier to maintain. Don maintains them with growth regulators, so there's not a whole lot of detail maintenance. We really spend a lot of time not forcing a lot of labor, because although we discussed initial budget, our client was always saying, eventually we just have a few guys to take care of it. And that's, there's no way to have just a few people take care of a golf course if there's detail work there. Smallish bunkers, small crew. The facility is nice. It's a nice large facility, so it's easy for, it's hidden, so it doesn't show throughout the property. And it becomes very efficient for the crew. When we started, he didn't say, from the beginning he always said it'll be ready when it's ready, do whatever it takes to do it right, and I'm in no hurry. And I didn't know what that meant. Knowing a number of golf course builders, there isn't a golf course, any of the large golf course builders, there isn't a large golf course builder that hasn't had a project where they haven't said every single project has never had enough time for them to finish it properly. There's always a window, an opening, and it's a huge impact. So for us, having a client, that was one of the resources that we were able to not have any deadlines. And the summer during construction, it was the rainiest July in the history of the county. It rained 27 inches. Because we excavated the lake, and the lake had clays in order to build a large profile for the clubhouse, we did need to plate that portion of the golf course with some sand from the back of the property. And it rains 27 inches. You're going to get a lot of erosion if you're going to have just sand cart paths. Sand does erode in 27 inches. So throughout the whole year was the rainiest year ever. So throughout, we were always able to not have to scramble and waste a lot. If we weren't going to meet a deadline, we never had a deadline. The perimeter of the golf course isn't irrigated. We didn't reestablish. We let nature come back, and it's going to rain. The native grasses came back, and the outside of the property, we went beyond how where a golf course should, in that we cleared extra trees so there's better airflow, and it's there's a lot of bugs on the Gulf Coast of Texas, so better airflow eliminates mosquitoes. And we were able to go, we didn't have a defined boundary we had to work in. We were allowed to go out as far as we wanted, just to clear trees to make the environment better. And we didn't have that deadline. So we were able to grow it inefficiently. Rich? Oh, hey.
This way.
Thanks.
Just a quick question.
Please ask.
You didn't touch on growing time. The last slide.
Sure. The growing, it took a period of time because we got holes established, and eventually we started, we had 9 holes playing first, and we continued when it was, so green grass is also, we sprigged probably 95% of the course, so whenever an area was ready, we sprigged it, started irrigating, and grew it in. So because we didn't have an opening date, growing was kind of flexible. We started in the middle, but that rain in July kind of changed our schedule. So whatever the environment, whatever conditions we had to work with, we just grew it in wherever was most efficient. Does that help? So playability came first. We wanted it to be as fun as possible for them. Ed Morissette made a comment yesterday about the golf course he used to play for a long time. Most of the greens all had a forced carry. They had bunkers surrounding the greens, forced carry. So in the day when the conditions were a little bit softer, they held the greens. But now that conditions are firmer, and if we do want a firmer, faster golf course, it would be. He's actually stuck. He's in a situation where the greens don't work in the conditioning that we would like to see. So everything we did was with playability, with conditions. The design of the greens was that there's only one hole, there's a forced carry, so no matter how we take care of it, Ed's always going to be able to come and have a good time and enjoy it. His son's coming down to visit soon. We're looking forward to Rand coming down. Because of the design of the greens and the contour and the interest, wherever you are, whether you have a full approach or a 20-yard chip or a 30-yard bump and run, there's always something on the golf course that makes you want to consider where to go, which way to, how conservative, how aggressive a line. So the strategy, when it works with the maintenance conditions, the strategy never leaves. It's always a part of the whole, no matter how close you are. It's big, it's windy, and in order to have a good drainage on the wet site, so there was a creek on the property, and the creek had some natural swales throughout, and the cattle ranch drains through the creek, and over hundreds of years it eroded and created lots of nice natural features, and that was the starting point for the golf course and the best spot to locate greens. And then the goal was to convert the cattle ranch to be as much like the creek area for playability, maintenance, and enjoyment. And so we made the cattle ranch look as much like the creek area as possible, but that also increased the enjoyment of the golf course, makes it fun, and with the proper construction methods, everything is firm, fast, and fun on an everyday basis.
Hey Mike.
Yes.
I might have missed this. How many different sets of tees do you have?
Tees are a good question. There's some people will go out and visit the golf course and say there's no tees, but when I look out there, I see tees everywhere. There's literally, as we're building the green, there's a couple flat spots around the green where if you feel like playing 6,300 yards today, you come over here, you hold out your putt, and you come over here and you play off to the next hole. If you want to play something. So generally, there's no formal tees. Everything is mowed at one height. It's just fairway height cut throughout the entire property. And sometimes I like to tee off right on. I tee off with a foot on the green and a foot on the fairway. The winner of the hole chooses where we play from. And if I win the hole, we have an intern. He hits the ball a long way. When he wins the hole, he's always playing from the back. So.
Mike, what kind of turf grass did you use on the course?
It's all tip toward Bermuda. It's 419 the fairways, and it's called Emerald for the greens. It's a 4. So tees are everywhere. When we were building the golf course, the crew didn't really know where anything was. They didn't know what tees were. They didn't have an idea of what they should look like. And so everything just blends in together. It wasn't until we cut a green pipe did actually anything look different. Before the green pipe was cut, everything just blended in and tied in naturally. It's inexpensive to build and paint, even though it's still all just for our client. Rich, be glad to hear we didn't install any car paths. There's just some maintenance traffic. And there's some maintenance paths around the outside, but there's no car paths. There's no ball washers, trash cans. He did ask for a driving range at one point, and I told him no. I said, I'm not going to build you a practice facility when you have your own golf course. You're just going to go play every day. We have a lot less detailed maintenance in the small car paths. The drainage, of course, the property, the land provides all the adequate drainage we need. But car paths create a lot of detail work. There's obviously not enough traffic. There's not enough play for him to. We walk. The tees are right next to the green, so it's one of the shortest walking courses, the easiest walking courses I've ever. It's about as easy as to walk into the old course. So our goals are, we listened to our client's goals, what he wanted, and we tried to use the resources he had, and we used all the resources he had. We used GPS technology, we used great components. We didn't cut corners and pick any cheap, we didn't do anything cheaply, but we did everything that he wanted. And what I find that a lot of the clubs, a lot of courses, they want too much. And if you want too much, like the Knights Club, they don't want too much. They just want to have a fun place for just about anyone to come play in a short period of time. If you ask for too much, it can get very expensive. And we listened to what they wanted, what would work for them, and you really can do fun, fast, affordable golf. There's a lot of solutions.
All right. Mike, thanks a lot. Mike, thanks a lot for your talk. Well, looks great. We've got just time for just a real quick. Anybody have a real quick question that needs to be asked?
Okay, Mark. The business model has changed any at all?
For this property?
Yeah.
No, it's the same.
The guy's still a millionaire.
It's 2 rounds a day, and I get to bring people every once in a while.
Chris?
No, please finish, Mike. Did you finish?
Yeah.
Okay. What did you end up spending on the irrigation system? Do you know ballpark?
Yeah, it was about $850.
$850?
There's a nice pump station. There's a liquid. There's a fertigation, nice pump station. It's a Dakota Systems. Everything's underground. There's nothing. Even out of some courses I visited while I was in town, and you can see little satellites. They just kind of catch my eye. So everything was hidden.
All right, thank you. Mike Nuzzo.